Warren Buffett once called it the eighth wonder of the world. He said, "He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it." But right now, the average American is paying it dearly. Think about your last trip to the grocery store. The eggs, the milk, the cereal. The prices aren't just higher, they're compounding. In the halls of the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C., Jerome Powell is playing a high-stakes game with the same math. They're trying to control how fast your money loses value, while you're trying to figure out how fast your investments can grow to keep up. To win this game, you need a mental shortcut, a cheat code used by hedge fund analysts and math savants alike. It's called the Rule of 72. It is the fastest way to calculate doubling time instantly in your head. But what's happening beneath the surface of the U.S. economy right now? The way inflation and interest rates are colliding could change everything you thought you knew about doubling your wealth. If you feel like you're running on a treadmill that's speeding up, you aren't imagining it. The American dream currently comes with a much higher price tag than it did just 3 years ago. We're seeing mortgage rates hovering between 6 and 7%, a massive jump from the 3% era we grew accustomed to. At the same time, U.S. household debt has hit a staggering record of over $17 trillion. Your 401k feels like a roller coaster. One day, the S&P 500 is hitting all-time highs on AI hype. The next, it's diving because a CPI report came in hotter than expected. The math of your life is changing. If you want U.S. macro explained visually and without the sensationalist media noise, subscribe to the channel. That's exactly what we do here at Sketchy Man Finance. Because to survive this cycle, you have to stop thinking in dollars and start thinking in doubling time. To understand where we are, we have to look at where we've been. History doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. Take a look at the late 1970s. Inflation wasn't just a nuisance, it was an apex predator. In 1980, U.S. inflation peaked at bone-crushing 14.8%. The Fed, led by the legendary Paul Volcker, had to do something radical. He didn't just nudge interest rates, he took a sledgehammer to the economy. The Fed funds rate hit 20%. Imagine trying to buy a house or start a business with a 20% interest rate. It worked to kill inflation, but it also reset the doubling time for every dollar in America. Fast forward to the post-2020 era, we saw an unprecedented surge in the M2 money supply, literally trillions of dollars printed and injected into the system in a matter of months. This led us to a U.S. debt-to-GDP ratio of over 120%. We are now carrying over $34 trillion in national debt. When the government's debt doubles, your purchasing power halves. That is the dark side of the Rule of 72. So how does the Rule of 72 actually work, and why is it the most important tool in your arsenal today? The math is simple. Divide 72 by your annual rate of return, or the inflation rate. The result is the number of years it takes for your money to double or for its value to be cut in half. 72 divided by R equals T. If the S&P 500 gives you a 7% historical return, your money doubles in about 10 years. But if inflation is 4%, the cost of living doubles in just 18 years. The data villain in our current story is the 10-year Treasury yield. It's the benchmark for almost everything in the U.S. financial system. When Treasury yields rise, the Fed is essentially squeezing the system. They're making it more expensive for corporations to borrow and for you to get a car loan. Currently, the Fed funds rate is at its highest level in over 2 decades. The big question everyone is asking is, will the Fed cut rates in 2025? If they cut too early, inflation reaccelerates. We get round 2, much like the double peak inflation of the 1970s. If they wait too long, they break the labor market and send us into a hard recession. The S&P 500 forward PE ratio is also sitting well above its historical average. This means investors are paying a premium for future earnings, betting on a soft landing. But serious investors look at the spread. If the risk-free return on a treasury bill is 5%, does it make sense to risk your capital in a volatile stock market for a 7% expected return? The Rule of 72 tells us that at 5%, your money doubles in 14.4 years with zero risk. At 7%, it takes 10.2 years, but with the risk of a 20% market drawdown. Do you believe the Fed has inflation under control and we're heading for a smooth ride? Or are we heading into round 2 of the inflation fight? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Let's break down what this macro environment means for you specifically, using the rule of 72 as our lens. For homeowners, if you locked in a 3% mortgage, you have one of the greatest hedges against inflation in history. Your debt is being inflated away while your asset value rises. Using our rule, at 3% inflation, the nominal value of your home could double in 24 years, while your payment stays the same. For renters, you're on the other side of that equation. If your rent increases by 5% a year, your housing costs will double in just over 14 years. Without owning the underlying asset, you're simply fueling someone else's compounding. For stock investors and 401k savers, the easy money era is over. The S&P 500 won't always return 10 to 15% like it did in the 2010s. If we enter a period of secular stagnation where returns drop to 5%, your doubling time moves from 7 years to 14 years. That is a massive difference for someone planning to retire in a decade. For small business owners, the cost of capital is your greatest hurdle. If you're borrowing at 9% to expand, you need that expansion to generate a return significantly higher than 9% just to break even after taxes and inflation. At Sketchy Finance, we focus on understanding these cycles. We don't react emotionally to the ticker tape on the news. We look at the math, the Fed's trajectory, and the historical parallels to find the signal in the noise. We're currently in a strategic gray area. The data is conflicting. Manufacturing is cooling, but the service sector remains hot. The labor market is showing cracks, but consumer spending hasn't fully rolled over. In times like these, the most dangerous thing you can do is go all in on one narrative. Whether it's the impending crash or the moon mission, both extremes usually lose. Smart macro strategy isn't about predicting the exact date of a recession, it's about risk management. It's about understanding that the rule of 72 works both ways. Focus on liquidity, focus on asset allocation, and most importantly, focus on your personal inflation rate, how much you are spending versus how much you are compounding. If you value serious macro analysis focused on the U.S. economy without the hype, the panic, or the political bias, subscribe to Sketchy Finance. We're building a community of informed investors who prefer data over drama. As the old market saying goes, the market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. Stay patient, stay informed. I'll see you in the next cycle.